Yo, what's up, guys? It's Talon. Today I'm going to be coaching a master ADC player, focusing on a couple key concepts, mostly focusing on how to get gold properly, understanding your champion strengths and kind of playing around that, understanding sort of champion pool, where some of the best meta champs fit in, and some other things as well. So if you're interested in that, definitely stick around. If you're interested in coaching from a rank 5 sovereign autofill player like myself, just DM me on Discord, Talon1169. It's currently $15 an hour. There's a chance I might be upping the price to $30 soon. I'm going to kind of see based on how this coaching website that I've recently became a part of, if that, ends up getting me a lot more people, then yeah, I'll end up raising the price. So we'll be seeing about that. But if you really want just $15 coaching, probably get it soon. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the video and I'll see you later.
I honestly don't have a lot of time like many people because I fly a lot as a pilot. So, but I usually try to find time to play and I always, maximize.
So how many games have you played this season?
This season I play 237.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, with that amount of games, it's going to be nearly impossible to ever reach Sovereign realistically. Like,
Right, of course.
yeah. So for me, like this season, I think it took me like 490 games to hit Sovereign, right? And that was with the 8% win rate. So
And that's really good.
yeah, so the point is, like, generally I would say if the goal is Sovereign, you're gonna have to play over 500 games. You could hit,
Of course.
but like it doesn't matter, right? Because whatever the real goal, like initially, right, your goal is Sovereign, but obviously you're currently Master Peak, so realistically the first thing is to try to get Grandmaster. And that means that, like, if we go to your match or your current how many marks are you right now?
Just one.
You're 1 mark. Okay. And wait, go back to where you were and then go to seasonal history. And then go to the right side, like click the arrow. Okay, so the last time you had Master was a while ago because you didn't play much. Makes sense.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
The point is, the only thing that you have to do to get Grandmaster is to win 15 of the games that you currently lost, because then, that's just how it would work. You'd get 30 like net marks, right? So currently the real goal is to just find small things that would potentially lose a game or two and, keep building up to those. And then eventually you're going to, maybe you'll be able to play the same amount of games and get Grandmaster. And then if you say you just have a little more free time one season, you play an additional 50 or 100 games, and maybe you're able to hit Challenger and like so on and so forth. But yeah, that's the only real thing I wanted to mention.
Of course. Yeah, for sure. Makes sense.
Yeah.
You want to dive into the games?
Yeah, for sure. Also,
I'll start with this one.
Your typical champion pool.
So I always try to go with the meta because that's when you abuse the most OP champions
and you
of the
can start
meta.
the replay as you're talking, by the way. Just
so I usually go Kaisa, Sivir, Varus.
Okay.
If I need a lot of mobility, I use Ezreal. It depends. Those are the champions that I usually use.
Okay, I mean that's good. Those are pretty much the best ADCs right now. So, do you have, when you're drafting, do you like pick based on comp? Like, or how do you pick? Because how do you choose Kaisa in this game, for example? Do you remember?
Well, to be completely honest, I don't usually. Sometimes I do, but most of the times I don't look at the comp. I look most at like. Well, it depends. For on this one, for example, I say, well, have Maokai, Rumble, Ari. There are engagers. I might need a little bit more mobility. I need some tankiness. Kaisa is a champion that can build tankiness and still do a lot of damage with her passive.
Yeah.
Let me try that one.
Okay, so if you want to pause real quick, just a couple things. The first, go in the top right, click the 3 little bars, and then Fog of War, turn that to be blue. That way we would see the vision you would see. Then for the champion pool thing, generally I'm going to base my ADC pick for solo queue most on my support more than anything else. Now, like, of course, if you see a bunch of tanks, you want to lock in Kaisa because she melts tanks or whatever, that's good. Generally, playing Kaisa with someone like Senna is really, like, counterproductive. Usually you're going to want to play Kaisa with the enchanters. Like, Kaisa, Sivir are kind of your champs. You're going to play with enchanters a lot. Varus you'd want to play with like a poke support in lane, like a Senna, for example, or with a champion with a lot of CC, some tanks or other things like that, based on your champion pool, right? And so we don't want to pick outside of our champion pool. That's why, choosing within those 3 or 4 champions, that's usually what you're going to want to do, generally. And Varus still does fine in the tank, so Varus would be a better pick here for that reason, because of the support. But Kai'Sa's
Right.
fine. Like, playing Kai'Sa here, it's not like we're trolling. Like, that's totally fine too. And then the first thing for the lane phase, and you can start the replay again as we're talking about this part, but you didn't really walk up on a like kind of parallel line with your support. Like, you want to be on a parallel line like how you kind of were right now, like how you guys are, you know, you could both basically auto attack someone at the same time, as long as you're not grouped on top of each other, so you're not getting like, you know, hit by AoE. But at the start of the lane phase, you were kind of a little further back than the Senna, which let the enemy get control over the lane. Now, they played it poorly and let you get control anyway after, but like if they'd played it properly, they would have pressured you back a lot further, and you'd kind of get
Right.
pushed under your tower. So that's the main first thing to keep in mind. And then when the enemy engaged support goes and targets our like support, we need to immediately target the damage dealer most of the time. Like, you targeted Maokai and you split your damage here. You could have killed either of these people if your entire damage was onto them, but you split your damage onto both people. So generally, like we said, target the damage dealer if the engaged support goes on your teammate rather than targeting the tank, because they're usually obviously harder to kill. And then if we are going to target the tank, we need to commit fully to targeting one or the other, because if we split our damage, then we're never really going to kill, because it's just going to be obviously a lot more difficult. Pretty straightforward. Obviously, sometimes you end up having to auto each person because it's just who's in front of you. But in this
Exactly.
case, you could have walked up to the Jhin right away, because he was clearly either going to go up to auto attack your Senna, or if you walked at him, then he backs off, and then now your Senna's fine. So, does that make sense?
Makes sense, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and here obviously like your Senna's kind of griefing, so not really much we can do there.
Yeah.
Small thing with the wave clear, I don't really recommend Wing so much for wave clear because it kind of does bleed our mana a lot. Not a big thing though. And yeah, that's mostly just on our teammate. But that's always like the thing about solo queue is that a lot of the decisions we make are kind of like things that we're trying to do to hide our teammates, you know, bad plays, because they just are going to be bad most of the time. Also, you should go up on this wave. Usually you don't want to recall as soon as the wave reaches mid lane, because then you're going to lose a lot of the wave. And the enemy are going to get control over the mid wave, or over the bot wave, so you'd rather have gone onto the bot wave first. Almost always do that unless you like think you're in a bunch of danger, but you had flash cleanse and the enemy recalled, so there's no way they ever would have pressured you. And then yeah, as we said, generally speaking, we can't control, you know, our shitty teammates who are always going to be shitty because we're playing solo queue. I mean, even if we're playing duo queue, they're usually going to be bad too. So the things that are important are like those things like targeting that Jhin, because hypothetically, if you had targeted that Jhin right away, your Senna wouldn't have died because they would have been too low to, you know, go forward, which again is their fault. But these are the types of things we kind of have to think about because we just can't control, you know, our teammates being really bad, basically.
Right.
And then you should walk up on the wave quicker as well. Like a lot of these times, you're kind of waiting to hit the wave until it ends up like reaching the actual middle point. But when the enemy are backing off like that, you can get towards the wave and kind of like already try to auto it once or twice before it actually like, you know, meets directly in the middle. Obviously, you know, then they're going to start walking at you and then you have to walk back and play back and forth, but you're just a lot of times way further back than you need to be. Like when you're playing Kai'Sa into a lot of engaged champions, you have to sort of use your third ability as a way to kind of space their engage. So like you're trying to squeeze autos onto Maokai but stay at the very edge of his engage range, and then again third ability backwards if he's ever like walking at you and kind of be like more aggressive trying to like push this lead. Because you have a Senna who is a really good laner in terms of like poking and just like range, so you guys have to abuse the fact that you have the range advantage in lane, because obviously the enemy are going to win an all-in with an engaged support. So we have to be getting more poke on them, because if we're permanently both full health, they're at a way better spot, because in an all-in they're going to win. Does that make sense?
Of course.
Yeah, and so to like generalize that, we just have to think about our lane's strengths versus theirs. Again, like in this lane, your strength is poking, so you have to play more around that. If your strength was, you know, if you had a Leona, for example, and they were like, I don't know, Yuumi and Vayne or whatever, like you're going to play more for the all-in in that type of scenario. And then here you had cleanse. You should have just cleansed right away, then you're fine, but you end up having a flash as well. That's something I see a lot of ADC players do. Yeah.
I did cleanse.
Yeah, if you cleanse right away, you wouldn't have to flash as well, because you'd just be able to cleanse out and get out right away. You cleanse late, and so then you have to flash as well. It's fine, like, but I see a lot of players kind of trying to hold these spells a little too much, and then they end up having to use their flash on the cleanse, basically. Like that's a very common thing that I'll kind of see. Yeah, you did cleanse, obviously, right? But yeah, that's just something. Be more like doing it right away. Kind of okay with losing our cleanse in that type of situation if we ever get CC lane, but that's more of a smaller thing. But yeah.
Absolutely.
And I assume you're going the on-hit build probably, right? Like Terminus.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Terminus, Randuins. Not Randuins, you know, the other thing, the
Runos, yeah,
bow.
yeah.
Runans, yeah.
And here at this point, you probably should just go back pot. Like, once you see no fight's gonna really happen, if you want to get the mid wave quick, that's fine, but our goal is really just to get gold here. We had no indication that this fight would work out. It ended up working out that we get the kill, but like, we had no actual real indication that this should work like this. He just ends up getting caught in a spot where he could have literally just walked backwards. The reason I'd prioritize the wave there is because a lot of the enemy were in other parts of the map. The fight already didn't work out well for us. Like, a teammate had already died, the dragon was already gone. There wasn't really much to gain from that fight. The most you could have gained was that kill, which we did end up getting. Had you pushed this wave right away, you would crash this wave under the turret quicker, make the enemy either have to come back quicker so that they can't go to the Herald, or the enemy would go Herald and then you get a bunch of free plates and gold and you deny them gold from crashing the wave. So even though you got 300 gold value, you could have easily gotten that same amount of gold value just from like staying in the wave. So generally when the game is going bad, like again, trying to generalize these things, because I will write notes at the end, by the way, about the more general points. Right now we're obviously talking about a lot of the details, but like the general thing is, if the enemy, or if the fight's already going bad or the game's already going bad, the main thing we're trying to do is just focus on the wave, get the gold from the wave, make the enemy have to come back to us rather than them being able to like push you know, kind of their lead by rotating a lot and getting initial prio over the wave. And then once we've got prio over the wave, if the enemy end up coming and just being even numbers, like they, you know, try to 2v2 us, since they're stronger, we're just going to ignore them. Like, we're going to back off, not try to fight. And then if they end up rotating like the Maokai did here, you're going to do basically exactly what you ended up doing, which is, you know, diving this person and getting a lead somewhere. Because again, the game's going bad, so we just have to try to like really overload one lane and get a big lead there. So again, just main thing is kind of more of a focus on the waves as well, rather than going straight to the fights, especially early game, because early game you're not very powerful in these fights. So
you're saying, like, since I'm solo queue, be a little bit more greedy when it comes to my gold and the waves.
I mean,
when
even if you weren't
sometimes
solo queue, it would still be correct. Like, even if you were in a 5-man, because it's for Kai'Sa, like, you're a late game champ who needs to get items and isn't really very useful before that. Like, obviously it would depend on the specifics, but yeah, most of the time we want to play around the waves first. Most of the game is dictated around the waves, so we go to where the wave is, then once we push that wave, now we have the option to rotate. Whereas you'd rotated first, and then that means that best case scenario, you get basically as much gold as you would have gotten from the wave anyway, maybe slightly more. But yeah, like that's kind of the main thing. And then yeah, I mean, you just push the wave here and probably recall again. It's kind of low. And I mean, like, mechanically speaking, you play most of the fights fine. Like, you know, there's not really like a lot of issues with like how we're clicking buttons or anything like that. So I even see you tried to auto reset with your ult. You ended up one-shotting him anyway, but that's good. Like, to understand that as well. And then yeah, we should recall right away here, because then we can go straight on the mid wave full health. Like, the wave's already pushing here. Your teammate's already on it. It's not really a bad thing to get it. Like, you could get it. I'm not like, you know, super upset about that. That's fine. But if we reset right away, we can go mid wave and get a full mid wave. I'd prefer that. But if you push the bot wave first, okay, so this is obviously a bit greedy now because we don't really know where the enemy is. Yeah, the first wave wasn't a big deal. Like, that was fine to stay for if you wanted. This one, you might end up being fine still, but yeah, a little greedy. And the reason that I'd want to have reset right away is because the dragon is spawning soon, and then we can go mid and get control of mid. Usually you want to be able to get control of mid, say 30 to 45 seconds before dragon. So usually what you're going to do, you'll push out your wave, which you would have done, you know, either when you go back or you did it right away. And then you go towards mid now. Now you get control over mid, and then you can go from mid into the jungle with your team. Whereas if you go through bot side first, like we're kind of doing here, a lot of times it's going to be really bad. Here it's fine because the enemy got like really over aggressive, so it's fine in this case. But in a lot of cases, we kind of would rather be going through mid lane first if possible. And that flash is just very scared for no reason. So you were going to have to flash eventually anyway. And especially because your Jace isn't here, so like we're not really going to win the fight. But when it comes to like playing these team fights out, it's generally something I'll see a lot when people are playing these auto-attacking hypercarry ADCs. They'll flash when there was no actual danger. Like, there wasn't anything that could have actually killed you when you flashed. Ari wasn't in range to charm, and you had someone like in between you anyway, Aatrox can't magically kill you from that range. Like he wouldn't have even been able to hit Q on you from the range he had. And we end up using our flash. And what ends up happening when we do these types of things is now we don't get nearly as much damage as we could have in a fight. We don't end up being able to possibly carry a fight or kind of pop off. And the main thing to kind of improve on that is to keep track of spells better. So you need to go into fights or even before the game, just think to yourself, what are the actual dangerous spells and how can I respond to them? So in this case, Ari Charm, Jin Root, and Maokai kind of his dash onto you. Those are all things you can use your cleanse for. So you could cleanse one of those. So if you see one of those and you have cleanse, you're not actually scared because you can just click cleanse. And then if we're looking at other things, what are we going to use our flash for? Probably not going to use flash for Maokai because it follows our flash. Probably not going to use it for Jin, most likely, because it's pretty easy to dodge with our third ability, right, on his root. And so we're either going to flash Ari root or we're going to flash some type of Rumble or Aatrox going on us. And so the reason I say this is because none of those factors were present that you ever needed to flash, right? We said what we needed to flash. We need to flash Aatrox or Rumble or maybe an Ari. None of those things were there, and we still flash. So if we're keeping track of these spells, then we don't have to like panic. Basically, we have an idea of everything that we actually need to react to, and then obviously random things pop up on your screen. Sometimes you never really know what's going to happen. You might have to flash in that case if you end up getting low or someone shows up and you didn't know where they were. But if you're having this general plan of keeping track of these specific spells, then you're not going to panic. You're going to get way more damage off, and you're going to be able to actually carry. Because again, a lot of panic kind of happens when you're playing these champions, and that's one of like the biggest issues. And then separate thing, getting gold. A lot of times you're kind of greeting these waves when they're already pushing and when they're on the enemy side of the map. So generally, the way we're going to decide whether or not we want to go up for an additional wave on bot side is one, you know, do we have enough defensive things? Like, do we have ult? Do we have flash? Do we have these types of things? Are we high health, obviously? And then is it pushing or is it not? So if it's already naturally pushing, as in like you have more minions than them, then you don't really need to respond because the enemy have to respond for it to start coming back into you. So like it's fine if you use the fact that it's already pushed, just go mid or go another place. And then once the enemy respond, then you go back and you respond to the wave. But if the wave is going to push into you, like they have more minions, or the wave is just really convenient and easy to get, those types of things, then you're going to go up for it. And also, you don't need to farm your teammates' buffs so early in the game because it doesn't give the global thing yet. So don't farm buffs. You can farm camps, but don't farm buffs until maybe when it's giving the global thing, which is if it spawns.
14 minutes. Yeah.
What?
I think it's 30 minutes.
I'm pretty sure it's if it spawned before 12 minutes. I might be wrong.
Oh,
like,
gotcha.
I'm not 1000% sure, but I'm pretty sure it's not about when it's up. It's about if it's spawned before 12 minutes. But yeah, I could be wrong about that. So I'm not 100%. And then I don't really know if I'm a fan of that. It actually worked out. I thought you're not gonna be able to kill her because she's gonna dash too quickly. And like we followed her before she'd used more dashes, but it ended up working out really nicely. So if we know that we have the damage and we go for it, it's good. Generally, the main thing I'm trying to keep track of with my mobility is how much mobility the enemy has before I go in. So if they have a flash up, I'm not gonna ult onto them until they flash so that I can catch them. But in that case, you could have just killed Ari. I didn't realize you could kill her, so that's good.
So can I explain the reason I did that?
Yeah.
So the reason I did that is because I saw that the team were engaging the tanks like Aatrox, Rumble, Maokai, and I saw that Ari positioned herself in a wrong way and she was alone. So I took advantage of that, knowing that she had no one to back her up. That's what the reason I went and did that.
It was a good play. No, like I said, I didn't realize you had the damage killer. That was 100% a good play.
And the other time when you saw me at bot greeting that wave and you say, oh, you don't know, when you saw that Jin used to teleport, the only reason I did that, I know it was wrong, is because I knew I was gonna get the gold to buy the boots.
Can you pause
and
here
I know it's
as well, just real quick? But yeah, you thought you could get boots, so you wanted to greed to get additional gold.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
that's not
especially
the
steel caps, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing at certain times to do that if you know you're safe and whatever. In that case, it was probably a bit greedy. And the other reason, again, why that was not the best play is the same reason why this is not great that we're farming so hard here. And that's that you're resetting late where now you're not on the objective initially, and so the enemy get control. And so in this case, you ended up farming 2 camps that you didn't need to farm. So now you have to reset at 9 seconds instead of like 25, 30 seconds. So now when you come to the objective, it's going to already have spawned. The enemy are going to have control. You might get bush camped, and then like even say hypothetically you hit 3rd, 4th item, whatever. great, but now you lost half your health because there was someone in the bush who had complete control. So that one item is definitely not worth, you know, losing half your health initially. Like, and these are the types of things that can happen. So generally, again, we want to reset before the final wave that will reach, basically before the wave, like the last wave before the objective's going to spawn. We want to make sure we're able to get on that right away. So you see like the current mid wave, right, that's on your tier 2 tower. That's the wave that we need to be on mid lane as soon as it's hitting mid, so that we get control over mid, and then we can go straight into the objective. Because usually the way you're setting up for objectives, have the waves pushed, the fact that the waves are pushing gives you the vision of the enemy, and then because the enemy have to respond on the wave, they're stuck further back, you get control over the bushes. It's a lot easier. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
Okay, you can start the replay now. That's just all. And again, depending on like how important your item is, you know, like there's cases where it's okay too. So this is all situational. Obviously, every game is kind of unique. So if you're like, no, I know if I get this item, I can literally 1v9 a fight, and you're like, I just need 200 gold, maybe in that case it's okay. Like there are rare cases. But here again, we're farming when this farm does nothing for us. Like I get that we're getting red buff, it's nice. But we're farming during a time where the enemy could be setting up for the objective. We're not really getting control over the mid wave. And again, we're just getting this farm, which is kind of unnecessary. So it's like you have a good awareness of farm and everything, but notice how you're completely split from your team. And this is because we're so focused on the farm that we're not able to go through mid with our team. So a lot of times before these objectives, we need to be going through mid with our team to set up better. And then the other thing is, again, your awareness of farm is good. You're good at getting gold for the most part, even greedy for the gold, right? Which I'd prefer the greed versus like not farming well. But the problem is you don't really understand when to shift that. So like, there's key objective timers where then we have to shift the fact that we're trying to get a lot of gold. So it's like first dragon, it's fine. They get first dragon, I don't care. Focus on the gold. They get second dragon, I still don't really care. But if they're getting soul, like we can't, you know, just give this up just for some farm, which isn't even going to be spent before the fight. Or like if Baron was up, right? Same thing. Or Elder. These are the times where now it no longer matters if we farm. Like even now, you farming is not bad, but say that you got caught here and you don't really know where everyone is, which you don't. Now you do, but like 5 seconds ago you didn't. If you got caught here, you lose the game instantly because they'll have Elder and or they'll have Baron and Soul now. Like, so these are the types of things where we need to kind of understand. Yes, generally focusing on the farm and getting gold is good, but there's certain times where we have to shift that, and you're not really currently shifting that, which then makes it, even in this case, for example, where you're kind of late to a fight because you're farming a top wave that is already pushing anyway naturally, and where your team's on the opposite side of the map, where if we control mid first, then a lot of these plays are just a lot easier.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I would say, yeah.
So you say, for example,
yeah,
I was there taking the red. We had no prior on the river.
Yeah.
We had no vision there.
Yeah.
The tanks, like a Momo, wasn't going to check if, you know, they got caught. They got caught by the end because they engaged first. I was there in the back. They died. How can I help after that?
So the way you can help is not
to
at
get
that
the soul.
point. Yeah, the way you can help is not at that point. It's beforehand. So the way that you can control where your teammates do or their actions, obviously you can never control completely, but the way you can make it easier or make it more likely that they're going to go in and actually bush check is getting control over the mid wave. Because the reason that your teammates can't walk forward is not because the enemy are just in the bush or whatever. It's because the wave is pushing into you, which means the enemy get vision. So essentially, the fact that, like, for example, where the wave is right now gives vision of all you guys. Whereas if there's no wave, they don't actually know exactly where you are. You get to walk up further, you get more control. But when the wave's stuck here, you guys have to go, you know, clear the wave. Your tanks can't really walk forward, because if your tanks walk forward, they're going to get one shot. Like, the enemy team would just one shot your tanks. And so, obviously, I'm sure your tanks could, you know, do a better job of getting in, but there's not really that much they can do for it. And the problem is you're resetting, like I said, 9 seconds before the objective. So by the time you get to the objective, the enemy are set up, they have vision, they have bushes, they see everything, and your team sees nothing because you're not controlling the mid wave with your team. And one thing you're going to find eventually is if you start trying to control mid wave, one issue is probably going to be that you're going to get caught on mid waves more. And so then at that point, you're going to have to realize, okay, I even need to be setting up my vision sometimes a minute beforehand on certain bushes so I know that I'm going to be okay. Or I need to still make sure my teammates are with me. Like, I'm going to ping, I'm going to try to go on the wave, but if everyone doesn't go, then in that case, now it's my teammate's fault, right? So, like, there's going to be this type of thing. But the main thing is you use the waves about 30 seconds before the objective to try to get control over the objective rather than waiting until literally 0 seconds until it spawns. And then, like, now we're trying to do everything. Because you're really strong. You could fight really well if you get a proper fight off, but you're not really doing anything to help set up that fight, basically.
Right. And for example, if the first dragon spawns in the Herald and the jungler, instead of going to the dragon, they go to Herald,
Yeah.
I mean, I just gonna keep farming. I'm not gonna have to go over there on the Herald. Maybe the support can do it, but
Yeah,
still,
exactly.
like,
That's what you did, and that worked out really well this game. So what you need to understand is your champion, like ADCs in general, especially late game ADCs, Sivir, Kai'Sa, whatever, they don't have agency in the early game because they don't have what they need. You don't have your invisibility on your third ability. You don't have the damage to threaten a one-shot on someone. You don't have any of these things. So in the early game, you're pretty much doing what you're doing now, where it's like, I'm just gonna farm. If there's a fight, I'll show up. If no fight happens, I'll just keep farming. I'm happy. The problem is you're doing that same thing on the more important objectives. You know, the third dragon where the soul is on the table,
hmm
or a dragon where you think you can actually win the fight, right? Like, so you need to be setting up for these fights when you want the fight to happen, and you definitely want the fight to happen on this timer where you're like 3 items, you're really you're like 7-0, whatever you are. You're just in a really good spot overall, right? So you just need to understand it's not about doing that for every fight. A lot of fights, you're right. If you see, you know, I don't think we can win this fight, you track the spells, you realize the enemy are ahead, whatever, don't fight in that case. But then when you're on these certain like power spikes or really important objectives, we have to be using the mid waves, and just the waves in general, we have to set them up a minute, 30 seconds beforehand, and then be going, you know, with our team, that type of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
I killed it, yeah. You have flash, you kill. Okay, that was good. I mean, like I said, I think your mechanics on this champion are very good in general, and like the way you play the fights is good, which is why a lot of these setups will make it very easy to then play, for sure. And the other thing is here, you're trying to do the Baron when your team's not. And so like you should be pinging Baron. You're right, you should do the Baron, but you shouldn't go and solo it. You should go with your team to make sure they don't randomly int and die, and if they end up going for another kill, fight with them. But when you start it like this, a lot of times your teammate's not going to follow. They're going to keep fighting. Someone's going to die. I'm sure you've had that happen where a guy randomly dies
Oh
every
yeah,
minutes.
a
And like
million
that
times.
happens, and it sucks. And you're right, you should do the Baron. But the reality is, we're the ADC, we can ping and we can use things like the mid waves to try to suggest our team to do something, but we can't just go and decide to solo do something because our damage, especially when you're this fed, is just too necessary. So even though, again, you're making the correct call, in this case, you should have just gone with your team, and if they fight, they fight. You try to ping them, try to get them to do it, because that's how you could actually lose the game. You just basically have to be like, if you're going to play ADC, which is a frustrating role, I fucking hate playing ADC, but
Yeah, it's hard.
yeah, but like you just kind of have to understand that you have a lack of agency because you are squishy. You don't really get to decide when your team goes in and that type of thing. So yeah, basically. And here, this is really, you should not be hitting this. You're completely trolling by hitting as well because you're like, everyone's alive. Like you guys are strong as well and everyone's alive. You don't want to be hitting the objective and suggesting for your team to flip, because this is another thing where it's like, if our teammates just keep hitting that and we're ahead and then they flip the objective and the enemy wins the smite, you just lose the game. Like you should have
Right.
immediately just been sitting there trying to zone, which is what you eventually did, right? Which was great. Going on to the Aatrox, you did everything right later on. It's just we don't want to even be hitting it like that, because that's always going to be like, sometimes your teammates are just dumb and they try to flip it then, because you ended up
Yep,
hitting it,
yep.
you get a lot of damage on it. And so like I said, that's the weird part about solo queue, is not every play is wrong because it's wrong because it's going to lead to these like kind of throws that we've all kind of experienced. So there's a lot of things that we can do differently, but yeah, I would say just mainly like focusing, realizing you guys are actually really strong. You can win the fight because you're like a 4-item Kai'Sa at this point or whatever you are. Just trying more to go for a fight, and then say that your teammates were behind or your game was like hard and you're probably going to lose the fight, then you would just hit that and hope that your teammate hits the smite, because you know you have nothing to lose if you're already behind. I assume, unless some miracle throw happens. Pretty impressive. Oh wait, actually this game does last a minute and a half more, so I guess you don't end yet.
So
Yeah.
I think it's so hard. I think ADC. I think ADC is the hardest lane for me.
Yeah.
Because you depend so much on your support sometimes, and if they grief you, if they throw. I mean, it's hard to control wave. It's hard to get some goal last hit, because the other team is gonna destroy you basically because you're doing a one v two in the bot.
Yeah. I mean, it
Um,
certainly is a hard role, like
it's
to
really
carry
hard.
on. It's actually a really like easy role in terms of like the actual like difficulty of the role itself, but it's really hard in solo queue or like, you know, with random
Yes.
supports because of all those factors. I mean, that's why like generally you just have to be able to be very, very selfish, which you are like doing a good job of, and your mechanics in the fights are good. Like I think it's a fine role for you to play, and good players can climb on that solo queue anyway. Like it's completely doable. But it's definitely frustrating, which is why it's also kind of depending on like if you enjoy it, because the mental can sometimes be really frustrating or whatever. Um, but I do think a lot of these things that you can do like are related to kind of just paying more attention to teammates' locations in the waves and like playing more around that rather than kind of doing just what we want. Because yeah, like if you do want to just have the decision-making power 24/7, play jungle or something, because that just, just makes more sense. Doesn't really make sense to play a role that doesn't get to do all the things we'd want to do in terms of like making a lot of decisions. So if you're more of like you can do a lot more. You can take a lot more control over the game. You just have to understand the timers in which you can do that, which again are like these key objectives, or are when you're hitting certain power spikes, rather than doing it like at all points in the game. Because at all points in the game, you're pretty much 24/7 prioritizing farm, which we kind of have to understand when we kind of shift that type of thing.
Gotcha. And you want to go to the second game or?
Yeah, we'll do one more game and then we'll write out notes. Also, you keep
Gotcha.
building gargoyle. Don't build gargoyle in ADC. That's stupid.
The stone plate?
Yeah, don't do that.
Yo, the thing is, I was testing it because goddamn, is sometimes it's so clutch. I know it's bad. I know it's bad. Trust me. I know it's it's bad for ADC, but I was testing it just to see, and sometimes it's really clutch. But yeah, I know it's not efficient for an AD carry.
Yeah, I mean the other thing is in this like it'd never be good, but in this game, because one, it just lowers your damage as well, like when you click it, so that obviously is worse. But you're playing against a champion who can easily build Servant's Fang, and you're not building Stasis into a Zed, so like it's really bad this game. But yeah, I do understand, so it's fine.
This one is shit. Oh, wait.
You can
I got
rewind. Just go to the yeah. I mean, here you just walked into a bush without your
Yeah.
team being there. It's not really, you know, it happens. Obviously, you shouldn't do that, but it is what it is. But yeah, generally, if you, and again, pretty straightforward, but if you don't get, like, if you ever stop, because here you, like, stopped for a second, you didn't go straight, so then the enemy could be in the bush, because if they just walk straight, they'd get there faster. And so then we walk into a bush when we know the enemy has a chance of being there. But yeah, so we're starting this lane really off the back foot, so there's probably not much we're going to be able to talk about lane phase-wise, because it's pretty much just, like, try not to die until you're able to recall here at this point. But it's still fine, because it's not that scary of a lane, so you could even recall here. Yeah, and you'll be mostly fine. You'll just be a little behind. I mean, staying up is fine too, really. Like, either choice is fine enough. Because you shouldn't be able to get punished that hard. I'll also go on the top right and click the Fog of War thing again. To blue. Yeah. There we go. And generally, we can expect Zed would start blue side, because he just needs the blue buff. So that's another thing. I don't know how well you kind of understand jungle tracking. Like, are you kind of keeping track of jungle generally, or not too much?
Honestly,
Yeah.
since I'm playing ADC, I don't even track that much of them.
Yeah, so that would be a good thing to kind of
right.
You should just recall here, by the way. You had enough time. Again, if you get a wave really quickly when it goes towards mid, you can just recall, or when it goes like hits the middle point of the lane and you get it like right away, you can take a recall if you need, because you're like low or whatever. Not the end of the world that we didn't, but yeah, in terms of jungle tracking, it's pretty important to understand basically the way jungle works. Wherever the enemy started, they're gonna end up on the opposite side, and they're gonna be there until like 2 minutes 30 seconds. Then they're gonna go back, and then they'll come back to that same side, you know, the side that they didn't start on, around 3:30 to 4. This is really over aggressive as well, trading into a Kai'Sa with passive, and we didn't again know where their jungle was, and I don't really know how it worked out. Like, it kind of worked out, but in terms of the decision, like, very over aggressive. But that's not a super, like, I'm mostly focused on things that are actually recreatable. This was more of a, like, we thought we could kill, so we went on them. It ended up kind of working out. Don't think we should have done it, but it worked. That's not really something where I'm super concerned, because again, we're more focused on the things that we can, like, kind of replicate basically.
Right. Especially with our vision of the set, to be honest.
Yeah, and I would say again the main thing, and also because of the jungle tracking, like I said, started blue side. We knew he started blue side because we saw him earlier. Around 220, 230, he's definitely going to be on this side of the map. At least 70% of the time, because that's just typically how it works. Jungle camps, again, the other side starts respawning around 230-ish, so we would have some time. He'd have time to like gank or do other things. And then again, same thing as like here again, you could have, as you push the first wave, gone straight on the second wave and had control, but you're never really going from one wave to the next. Like if a wave was in the the lane for a while, you can look at your map to see wherever your lane, your next wave is, that's where the enemies is, relative to them, their turret. Does that kind of make sense, like how you're looking at?
Right, yes.
So when you're doing that, if you realize that another wave's about to come, you go and you clear that wave, you walk up further to get control over the wave, but every time that you clear a wave, you're backing off right away. So that's kind of something that needs to be worked on. And then you're also trading at a really weak point here. Like, just the enemy sucks, so this works, but it shouldn't work. Because again, as we spoke about, the strength, we need to understand the strengths and the weaknesses of lanes. So in this case, Kai'Sa Lulu wins the all-in against you for sure. Kai'Sa passive, Lulu's attack speed, and like the overall, that's just going to be more long-term damage. So how are you going to win? You're going to win through poking through the wave, because you're bouncing on the wave, gives you complete control over the wave, and then once you have control over the wave, it's really easy to play. So like here, you should immediately bounce on the wave like you do, and you should have been doing this every time. And then now you have control over the wave. And the main thing about Sivir that's really nice is you have such good wave clear that after you push a wave, you give yourself a long time to go and do other things like ward, for example. So this is a very good decision by you, for example. 34 seconds before the objective, we're going and warding. What should we do now, as we spoke about before? Push the wave right away, recall to reset, and then either go through mid initially with our team, or in this case, because it's early game, we can just go back to top side, right? But we're trying to reset and then be ready for the objective. So you see this sequence that you did, apart from not recalling far enough back so you can get your backstops, but like everything else was perfect. And this is exactly how you need to be setting up for a lot more objectives, basically. And again, you put yourself in another chance to all in, and yeah, because we didn't recall far enough, now we're stuck here without our gold, right? So this is just like a really consistent factor. Whereas this time, again, you made the correct decision and just ended up not recalling far enough. So I'm not really, that's fine. But we need to be very aware of how like easy the game is when we're ending up just resetting properly. And we also need to understand that as Sivir, it's mainly about controlling the wave with our bounce thing, and then using, that time to rotate for vision or do other things like that. Not really using that time to trade hard in lane, because you're Sivir, you're more like scaling, you're not really going to fight a lot early. If you see an easy opportunity to, or you're winning lane early, or your jungle's there, that's different. But your jungle in this case was on bot side, right? He was going towards Herald. You'd already had the wave push, you could have just recalled, but instead we kind of again went for some trades with them after. And so like kind of understanding as well, our trades need to be based more as a late game champion, our trades need to be based around jungle pathing, because you're not going to be strong enough to usually just solo kill your laner. Unless they're really inting, which in that case, obviously take advantage of it, but yeah.
Right.
And so again, we have a timer where we could do something, and what do you do for this 10 seconds while the wave comes? You just sit in your lane and do nothing. We could easily go for a ward if we have wards. We could go for the vision plant thing if that's up. We could just be doing a couple little things, and then we're still going to get here, because you see how we didn't actually do anything with that time. And so now again, you push this wave, you have about 20 seconds. What should we do? We should go mid, because now we have a turret to play around, a wave in mid, because you can see the mid waves coming first. But instead, we end up waiting a little bit to recall, which means now the wave is going to get there a little quicker. Not bad, because you still recalled in a decent timer, but like we could have done like 5 seconds earlier. So if you want to take a recall, that's fine. Basically, the gist of it, again, the general thing is, after you push the wave, which again, Sivir's amazing at pushing the wave, you're doing a great job of getting the wave right as it comes. You either recall, you go for vision, or then you take control of mid for a wave, and then you go right back after, so you're getting an additional wave for yourself. You basically use that time to create an additional wave. So again, we can see on our map right now, this is a perfect example. On our map, we can see that the wave is about to come. Push this wave, immediately go mid, because realistically, Kai'Sa comes here, you can't actually get plates or get anything. But you're creating a huge timer, because look how the next wave is only at your tier 3. But instead, we're staying here. They're under turret. What are they going to do? They're going to wave clear. We go back. We sit for another 20 seconds. Wave comes back. We did nothing, right? You could have been in mid here. Look at that Victor's health. The Victor's low. Look at the turret's health. The turret's low. There's a wave coming. There's so many things we could have kind of done with that time, basically.
So you're saying like I did well there. I got the wave. I should immediately go mid and try to make a play with the Syndra.
Yes, so there's going to be a lot of factors that you're going to have to look at, because what's going to happen sometimes when you do this is like you're going to do that, nothing's going to happen mid, and then you might lose, you know, your turret, or you might lose some plates, you might lose gold, whatever. And so that's going to be a bad decision. And so there's a couple of factors we have to look at. So the first is, how quickly did we push the wave? So you pushed that wave before it even reached the middle point, which means you have a lot of time. Like we saw, you know, your next wave was on the tier 3, so it was like very far away. You had like 15, 20 seconds. So the first thing is, you had a lot of time. The second thing is, the enemy jungle was dead, so there's no scare, you know, there's no worry of that. Third thing was, mid wave was low, or mid turret was low rather. Fourth thing, Victor was low. Fifth thing, there was a wave already going in mid, so it was going to get there quicker. So it's all these different things. You're looking at the mid wave position relative to your, you know, wave. You're looking at the health bars. You're looking at, is there a jungle? Do we know where jungle is? Is he dead? Is he wherever? You know, all these different things. And in this case, pretty much all the factors led to me thinking, I want to go mid. But then let's say you go halfway towards mid, right? You just start walking towards the river. And then all of a sudden you see their jungle show up. Or you see, you know, their Victor back off, or the wave is gone. Go right back to top lane, you're going to lose nothing, because the wave is still only going to about to be like reaching there. It's not even going to be there yet, right? So it's not even always about that roam / like play moving to get vision.
It's about
Whatever.
understanding the play and what to do.
Yeah, it's
Right,
like you
right.
go and you look and you try to make it happen, and if nothing happens, you go right back. You're not going to lose anything. It's basically,
Right.
you just have to use those 10 to 20 second increments between the next wave coming to actually do something. Because as Sivir, again, we're fine with going even as Sivir. So you get the wave, and you're like, okay, now I'm just going to go do something else for a little bit. I come back, and I don't lose anything. Now, if you thought you could dive them, like if your jungle was on your side of the map, and your jungle was close, and the enemy, you know, your laners were already low health, and they weren't just recalling and coming back, then you'd go for a dive, right? So it's all these different factors we kind of have to look at, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's makes sense.
And then again, you're trading with a Kai'Sa who can easily win the trade with you with the all-in, like as we kind of see here. And your Senna was also backing off. So like if your AD, or your support is, you know, on the bottom side, or like is behind you rather, and not on a parallel line, you know, on an even line with you where you can both auto, you don't want to trade a lot, because then both of the enemy champions can hit you at the same time. Meanwhile, your support can't, because they're further back. So we have to pay attention to those types of things as well. And again, understanding the strengths. Your strengths is trading in the waves because of your bounce. Your strength is not, you know, and what's Kai'Sa's strength is literally trading out of waves because her Q isolated, right? So we're trading exactly in what she wants. So yeah, basically just that. And then again, what do we have? Another 10 to 15 second window. What do? We stay in our lane and jack off for a little longer, and we don't really get any value. So we can kind of just see the same thing, which is good that we see the same mistake, because then it's very easy to fix, right? And it's going to help us on a lot of different waves, make a lot of different plays. Because the difference between, like you know, a grandmaster versus a master is not going to be anything crazy. It's going to be 1 or 2 times where they're getting a couple extra gold. You could have probably created 500 to 1,000 extra gold off this. What's that? Like that's already potentially you getting an item on a dragon that you otherwise wouldn't have had an item on. If you're ever like 500 to 1,000 gold off of that. So it's just all of these little things that add up so much. And it feels like you have to make a bunch of big changes, but in reality, all these little things are kind of what actually add up. Even now, what did we do? We pushed the wave, the enemy are under tower, we have no mana, we should instantly recall. Instead, you recall about a couple seconds later again, because you were walking around thinking about it for a little longer. Does that matter generally? No, it usually doesn't matter, because it's only a couple seconds. But there's probably 1 or 2 games in the last 100 games where you wasting 2 seconds is the difference between you getting a kill or not. And maybe one of those games, that kill gets you an item spike. Like it's always possible, and you don't know, and that's why it's all those little things basically.
Yeah,
And so again,
absolutely.
here, I would have gone mid right away because there was a mid wave that was closer, and then we go top side after because our teammates covering top side anyway. Whereas now you see that entire mid wave's dying under turret. But either way, pause right now. Pause right now, and then tell me what you should do right now for the next 20 seconds. You should know exactly what you should do. So, based on what we've talked about, basically.
Oh, the wave is still on the second tier turret. So honestly, I should have gone mid, get the wave, then come back. Actually,
think about objective timers and think about what I was telling you.
If I can buy right now, I could buy ward the dragon and get ready for the dragon because it's 30 seconds away from the...
I'll just tell you, it's fine. So basically, as we were saying in the last game, typically the sequence about 30 seconds to a minute before objective is we push our lane right away, right? And then after we've pushed our lane, now we go mid or we recall or we do other things. So this wave is really close. It's not at your tier 2, it's nearly at your tier 1. Like it's basically there. So if you walk up right now in like 3 or 4 seconds, you're already going to be able to hit the wave. Right after you hit the wave, you can recall and go straight through mid, and then you have control of mid. And now, 15 seconds before the objective, you're already in mid lane setting up for it. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're saying I can get the wave real quick, recall, go to mid,
Yeah.
get mid prio, and then we're ready for the objective, and
Yeah, and
we
even
have
if
prio
you
in the
didn't
mid.
have an item, you could walk to mid. Like, you don't have to recall if you didn't have something to buy. So if you have something to buy, then you'd recall. Otherwise, you just walk there. Either way,
Gotcha.
the general sequence we need to understand is we push our wave out, then we go mid for control over that wave that's going to come right before the objective.
Absolutely. Yep. Gotcha. Makes sense.
And in this case, yeah, it's good to fight probably because we're about even and our team is doing decent. If say we were behind here, then we could play for that bot tier 1 tower because that's pretty low, and then we just give up the dragon. But in this case, it's good. I don't know why you didn't take the fruit. It kind of annoyed me. It's annoying me that you're not taking it. But yeah. So we can see here it's the same thing though, right? Where you're staying in the top side, and so now we don't have control over that mid lane. So then we don't get the vision. We don't get. It's also additional gold, right? And now you see Zed took control of it. And so maybe this fight still works out, but now Zed gets a flank angle. Zed denies you guys all that gold. Notice how nobody's getting that mid-wave gold now, so all that's dying to the turret. And then Zed's gonna come flank you guys and have a really good angle on you. And maybe it won't matter, but it could. And this is the type of thing we kind of need to be keeping in mind. So, and yeah, he ends up being like the worst player on the planet. So shout out to him for just sucking. So it didn't matter, but yeah, that is something to keep in mind. And then you end up playing the fight again. Like how you play the fights almost always is good. We're generally popping off in fights and team fights, so if we're just doing these things to set up for the fights easier, then everything's just going to be a lot smoother. And here you should take the top turret because, you know, yeah, a lot of them are dead, which we do. Perfect. Then we should look at the fact that there's a wave about to come. Clear the wave, then we can recall. And now this is a really important shift to understand. So now you have the top wave pushing. You don't need to come back to top wave until the enemy comes because, again, it's pushing. So we should go bot side or mid right now. The reason bot makes the most sense is because there's a turret that's really low, so we would get a lot more value out of that in terms of possibly getting the turret. But even if we went mid, we get control of mid, and then from mid, we go towards bot, because then we're going to have the turret to play around. But we just need to be doing one or the other. So if you go mid here, it's fine. You get this mid wave. Maybe you get the next one if it's there quick enough. And then right after that, you go towards the bottom side of the map. And then you make a play for that, because also Baron is spawning. And so having control over the Baron side of the map, your Baron laner should be shifting towards that side of the map now, like your original lane, because usually the Baron laner wants to be opposite of the Baron. They just want to be opposite of whichever objective is spawning next, basically. So, and instead we're ending up chasing. You see, like, it's not a bad fight to take, so it's not the end of the world to be chasing because we saw a good chance to fight. But literally every single person's in the wrong spot. Not a single person on either team is doing what they should right now. They're all on the wrong spot. Everyone is on top side who should be top side. Everyone who should be bot side is top side. Everyone who should be top side is bot side. I keep saying the fucking same thing because my brain doesn't work, but you know what I mean. Your Gnar should be on top side right now. All of you guys should be on mid lane, then going through the bottom side of the map, because you want to have control over the objective, because you're the team fighters, you know, the people who are actually trying to fight. Meanwhile, your side laner is supposed to be on the side lane, basically.
So Gnar should have been on the other dragon side, on the other side.
Yeah.
And then we should be pushing mid and take control of the river for the Baron, you mean?
Yeah, and that's, again, it's notice how it's always kind of the waves that we're playing around. It's always like we push this wave, then we do something. And so the fact that you'd pushed first that top wave, like, it's an entire sequence. It's not just one thing. So the fact that you'd push that top wave after that fight meant that the enemy couldn't get the top turret right away because the top wave was pushing. And so now that the top wave was pushing, we then go towards mid to get control over the mid wave. Then, because we have control over the mid wave, now we're finally ending up on a part of the map we want to be, which is the bottom side, because there's an easy turret to take, and because the Baron's on that side of the map.
Yeah, absolutely.
And instead, Gnar, like, the enemy were dumb enough to give your Gnar a bunch of turrets, so it kind of worked out. So this is generally what happens. Yeah.
Not just as Silver, you're saying, as any ADC, I take control of the wave, I do something in the wave, I have some time to do something, go do something, put a ward, throw the vision with the plant, you know, something that can show you some information where the enemy is.
Exactly. I mean, even here, like, right now, you ended up pushing the wave, and then you backed off, whereas you could have taken control, warded a part of the objective, gone towards the bottom side of the map to get another wave. You would have a lot of control. And now if you're one, you know, thing from an item and you got a camp, it's not a big deal. Like, that's not bad, right? Because you got your Infinity Edge, it looks like. So like in that case, not a bad idea. You're just like, oh, I have that. But you could have gotten gold from a wave as well, or gotten control of these other things. But in that case, it was fine
Gotcha.
because you hadn't finished yet.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that's
So
generally
for example, now you see me going up because
yeah.
they're gonna try to get the turn. Do you think that's the right call, or should I be with the team down in the
So
Baron
what you
side?
should be doing is spam pinging your Gnar to go topside, ping attack top, attack top, attack top. About 15-20 seconds ago when we noticed this, and then if he just doesn't go, in this case because there's two of them, if you're just sitting there and catching the wave, it's fine because they're not going to get Baron because two of them are topside. So the real worry is like, say this was the Garen, you wouldn't go because if it was Garen, then the enemy Kai'Sa Lulu could be on the Baron side and could destroy your teammates on that fight without you because you're pretty strong or whatever. But because it's the Kai'Sa and the Lulu, in this case, don't try to defend the turret because you're going to get dove. But you can just let the turret die and then get the wave and then go towards mid.
Gotcha. There's so much to learn, like
Yeah. And so yeah, here again, the difference now, the fact that Baron is up, is we don't want to go on this next wave. The wave is neutral, we can see, right? It's going to reach the top side at the same time. We don't want to go on this wave because we want to spend as much time as possible on the Baron side. So whereas before I would tell you that this is the correct choice, say it was 11 minutes into the game and Baron hadn't spawned, but because Baron's up, now we're on the wrong side of the map for too long, and again, the enemy could potentially get value. They didn't, right, in this case, they kind of just died, but a lot of cases, they're going to have control over the Baron, our teammates are going to die there, and then we lose the game because we were on the wrong side of the map, that type of thing.
So you're saying that I should be positioning myself now between mid and the other lane down where the top lane.
Yeah,
Since that's the objective now.
exactly. That's always how it kind of works. It's like because
Gotcha.
in the mid game after some turrets are dead and whatever, where now the lanes are starting to naturally push, like top side's already pushing. Usually what happens is you're gonna get the mid wave first, and then after mid wave you go towards the side that is like you would ward, for example, Baron right now, or ward the blue buff or like their blue buff, somewhere to get vision around there. Whereas you walk towards the top side of the map, where this doesn't really do anything. And now say a fight breaks out, you're not there to follow up. The enemy could kill your teammates, and then you lose a Baron off this or that type of thing. So, but you can see how pretty much nobody understands this in Master. Kai'Sa's on the wrong side,
Yeah,
you're
man.
on the wrong side, Gnar's on the wrong side. They're pretty much always on the wrong side of the map. And again, this is where, once again, you're doing your thing where you're farming everything when we shouldn't be farming everything. Because in this case, if your teammates end up dying on that side of the map, you lose the Baron, and it's really bad. Now, luckily, your teammates get the Baron for you, but this is not because of any decision we made. This is just, it
Right.
just happens to be working out that way. And say you were on there right now, your team kills Victor and Garen, you get the Baron. Yes, you'll lose this one turret to Kai'Sa, but you lost it anyway because you can't possibly kill Kai'Sa Lulu. But you know who can survive Kai'Sa Lulu is your Baron laner because he's way tankier. So it's this same kind of sequence that leads to a lot of losses and very close to you guys ending up losing the game because of this. But yeah.
Not just that, they got the tower, the inhibitor.
Yeah, so you lose inhib as well. Yeah, and that means Kai'Sa Lulu get crazy strong, which is a very, that's game losing in a lot of cases. And this dragon doesn't actually matter because each team has one dragon. Anytime that each team has a dragon, the third dragon is useless. So you can only use it if you want to fight because you want to get the enemy to come. But it's never something where you actually have to worry about the objective itself. But yeah, main thing for you in these middle parts of the game is positioning yourself more in a way, like if you need to protect a turret, you sometimes have to go protect a turret, right? But generally speaking, we're trying to get control of the mid wave, and then we go into the objective side of the map, and we're not trying to farm 24/7 in the mid game once we've already hit our item spikes when there's an objective spawning or our team's fighting. Like if we have nothing to do, say two of your teammates are dead and two of the enemies dead, there's really nothing to do, then you can just go farm a random jungle camp.
Right.
The waves matter more.
So, for example, I'm on the right side now because the objective is here. I push the wave, even though it's a wave that has the inhibitor.
Yeah.
And just waiting to control the river, have priority on it, right?
That's perfectly fine. If you wanted to continue going up top side, you could. What I would do here is go and shift mid now. The reason I would shift mid is because if we look at it, there's none of our mid waves are blocking any of theirs, which means their mid wave is going to get to mid at the same time ours does, so it's going to be an easy wave to get. Whereas if we look at our top wave, it's currently pushing really hard. So you're going to have to walk up way deeper to go and get that. Obviously here you're going to go fight Zed, right? Because Zed's there. So you're going to go try to kill Zed. Either you kill him or you don't, then you go mid right after. Looks like we do kill him, so that's obviously good. But yeah, I would just go through mid, which I think is what you end up doing. You get the objective, then you go mid. But yeah, this is a perfectly fine sequence, basically, yeah.
Okay.
So how you get.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Do you disable chat when you play?
Yeah. I turn on party chat, and then you don't see what they type. You still see their
Okay.
pings, which is good because sometimes pings actually
So you
help.
never type.
No, I mean like every once in a while, like I'll type. Like I think yesterday, one of my games, like one of my teammates knew me, and then they ended
Yeah.
up doing bad. And so I like turned on team chat for a second, and I just said it's only $15 an hour for coaching. And so I just like told them that, and then I turned my chat off. So like every once in a while, I'll do it like for fun, but like yeah, I basically never have chat on. So.
So, for example, you see me taking some gold. Do you think this is a right call now? There's no objective, or should I be pushing maybe the top
Do we
lane?
still have Baron up?
So,
Is Baron still up? Like, go look at your minions. I don't know if it's up or not. Like, if we still have the Baron, or if they're done. Yeah, so there's
yes,
still
we
Baron
do.
buff. So in this case, we should be taking advantage of the fact that we have Baron to try to push. So like, you could even just go push bottom side right now if you wanted. You want generally to be using the Baron to the fullest. So going with your team, trying to make a play, even just on mid wave, getting that pushed, and then say your Baron, I don't know exactly when but say it expires in 20 seconds. Say you guys push one more wave, you get nothing out of it, and now everyone's recalling. That's going to be the time where then as you're walking back resetting, you're like, oh, I need 200 gold till Navori. I'm going to go farm a camp, and then I'll recall. But you're not going to do it now where your team is, again, you can see your waves are pushing, your teammates are trying to take turrets because that's what you do with Baron, and you're farther back. So let's say one teammate gets greedy and then you lose a game off it. Like that's a completely realistic thing. And is it your fault that your teammate flashed into 4 people? No, but you could have been there and it wouldn't have happened if you're there, right? And we can
so
expect
mhm,
aggression because we have the Baron basically. So
absolutely. So my play,
yeah.
the one that I should be thinking every time in this position right now, every time I'm playing a game that let's say this scenario happens, because it happens a lot of times,
Yeah.
what should I be doing?
Most likely you just go on mid wave. Like generally when you have Baron as a ADC, you're mostly just gonna go hit the mid wave. And then let's say the enemy are clearing the mid wave and you can't push. Like you're like, we can't get this. So you push the mid wave and then you're not gonna be able to go further. Then you use the fact that mid wave's
So
pushed to then go to the side lane
mhm.
after, basically.
So you think not going to bottom and push that little wave over there so that can wave crash over there, or just because you think no, just because the minions have the barons gonna crash anyways?
Yeah, because they have Baron, it's gonna crash anyway. Like I said, it's fine to go bot. Like if you did go bot here, I wouldn't mention anything because it's fine. It's a
Gotcha.
totally fine
Okay,
choice. But mid, I would say is most likely better and more
gotcha.
consistently gonna be what
So
you
you're
do.
saying as an ADC, I should always focusing first where the objective, decide where the objective is, and that's also like prioritize mid.
Yeah. So a lot of times the way it works in the earlier parts of the game is you're going to go to your lane, push your lane, then go mid. But then when it gets to the later parts of the game, a lot of time, one lane's already pushing, so you don't have to go there initially, or your teammates on the side lane because teammates are just going to side lane more in the later parts of the game or whatever. So then you go straight mid, basically.
Gotcha. Beautiful. Thank you. Honestly, here I think I'm making the wrong call because I'm wasting Baron for no reason.
Yeah, but it's not like an awful call either. Like it's not like this is like losing us the game, right? The thing is sometimes then like our teammate in mid might die here. I don't know if he actually does.
Yes, she.
Yeah, so the fact that she dies there is like if we were there, she wouldn't have because we would have been there, and then I think you end up killing him. But it's definitely realistic that you wouldn't have killed him, and then that's where the game is all of a sudden like now we lost the game because maybe a Baron's about to spawn or an Elder's about to spawn, and then it could be really dangerous. Whereas you can see the time where you're being aggressive now is when the Baron's not even up anymore, and luckily it works out since a couple of the enemy are already dead, right? But yeah, it's kind of that. I think we understand for the most part. A lot of your mistakes come around waves, like timings, mostly the time you use in between the waves. The only real like fighting thing is sometimes keeping track of those spells a bit better. So yeah, that's probably the main things we'll be focusing on, and then the lane phase as well. Staying more on a parallel line with your teammate and understanding the actual strength of your champion in lane instead of playing a poke champion to all in and all in champion to poke and that type of thing.
So you're saying that I can reach challenger server with just
Yeah.
a couple tweaks.
I mean, definitely. Like I said, because you don't play as much, I would say it's unlikely that like you actually reach it. Like say this season, for example. But I think Grandmaster this season potentially is very likely with like 20-30 days left. I would say maybe 50-50 for whether or not we actually get Grandmaster if we implement these things properly. And then I would say, next season, I definitely think if you play the same amount of games, you should be able to hit Grandmaster, and then like Challenger or higher is definitely possible if we play a little more, and then we, do these things, continue to improve, that type of stuff. But when it comes to actually implementing these things as well, don't like, because again, your focus, your goal is sovereign, which I think is a good goal. I think it's fun. Like, I'm glad that you have a specific goal in mind that you want to do. But because we're currently master, it's good to focus on one step at a time rather than, you know, sovereign right away. Which is why when you're going about improving these tips, I don't want you actually trying to work on every single small thing at the same time. I want you to choose 2 or 3 things that we talk about, specifically work on those for however long until you feel like they're built as habits, right? Like, I want you to go into every game legit just thinking, I need to use my 15 to 20 seconds between every wave as efficiently as possible. And then, you know, sometimes you're going to use it wrong and you're going to like die from it, and you're going to think, well, why did I die? What could I have done differently? All this type of thing. And then once you feel like you're really understanding that specific part of the game well, now you move on to maybe tracking spells and fights. Like, maybe you realize now your team fighting's not doing as well because you're focusing too much on another thing. So then you move on. And then eventually, over time, 2, 3, 4 months from now, you've improved on so many different things that you hit Grandmaster, Challenger, whatever. But you're not just all of a sudden going to go into your games. Maybe, you know, people have this placebo effect where they get coached by me. They win like 10 games in a row. They're like, oh my God, your coaching was so good. But then, you know, 5 days later, they go on a losing streak. You're going to go on winning streaks and losing streaks still. You're probably going to be in a relatively similar rank for a while. But if you're improving on these small things, again, like over the long run, that's what really matters. So your goal shouldn't really be any specific rank for this next 30 days. You're like up this because that's when season ends, roughly 30 days. Your goal should be improving those details. And then I would say next season, first month or so, since you never can climb that high first month because like all the sovereigns are dropping lower or whatever, you really use that time as well to continue improving on these tips or finding your own tips, you know, that you find in your gameplay after you improve these things. And then, you know, say the second half of the season, maybe you happen to have a little more time on your hands, you play a little bit more, you focus on really grinding, and then like, you know, that type of thing basically.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna share my screen now, so that I can write notes, and then I'll share the notes with you. Like, I'll send them to you. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, Iso that's not. It always autocorrects. I don't like that. All right. So, when I write these notes, the way that I word them, if it doesn't make sense or anything, interrupt me, tell me you want me to word it differently so it makes sense to you, or if you have a question about it, just stop me at any time, because obviously the point of the notes is to help you improve. It doesn't matter if it makes sense to me, if it doesn't make sense to you. So starting off with the first thing, we'll just go through the lane phase and then kind of go from there. So parallel line with supports. Do you know what I mean by that or no?
Yeah, like, you know, walking together
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
same.
But also obviously make sure you're spread apart enough that you're not getting AoE'd, but that's, you know, pretty straightforward.
Right.
Then just generally in the early game, play around our lane strength. So like I'll say like don't fight Kaisa. Dude, I hate autocorrects so much. Kaisa outside of the wave as a Sivir. Like obviously, right, you want to fight in the wave. Dude, it autocorrects every single fucking term. So annoying. Because it doesn't play well Drift-Eyed. Alright, anyways. Lane phase, those are the 2 main things, and then last thing in lane after pushing wave in lane, and go for wards. Oh, and then there was the jungle tracking thing as well. So the jungle tracking thing is not currently something I think is like the main thing you should focus on, but I also just say, like say you're, you know, again, a month down the line or a couple weeks or whatever, and you're like, I keep getting ganked. Maybe that's something you then eventually start thinking about more.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the main early game things. Then when it comes to first like kind of sequence is about say 30 seconds before first dragon. So 30 sec before first drag usually hits or I keep hearing like a weird sound from your mic. Are you okay? Or is it good?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
good.
know what it is, but usually get the wave or push the wave. Words are hard. Push the wave, then recall, then go through mid, or go back to side lane. Just depending on game. Like that's really going to be up to you. It's like, do you see an opportunity to maybe fight mid? Maybe you're going to go mid. If you don't see one, you just go back the lane. And then around objectives in general, we need to recall about 30 to 60 seconds beforehand and get on mid wave. Use mid wave go into the objective. Does that make sense?
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. And then now we're gonna kind of talk about like in between these objective timers. So generally in mid game, push out your own wave. And again, a lot of these tips are very similar because that's where a lot of the mistakes are kind of coming. But push out your own wave, then use that 10 to 20-second timer as well as possible, which would be like board, recall, roam, etc. And then when it comes to the mid game, in mid game, we want to spend time either in mid or on the same side of the next objective for the most part. And I'll write for the most part because sometimes your NAR doesn't listen, goes on the wrong side, and sometimes you do have to cover a wave or two. But usually when it comes to covering those waves, you're not covering them at the neutral point. You're waiting till they get pushed into you. Whereas, in the earlier parts of the game, we're kind of more pushing the wave itself. And then, yeah, just generally, game revolves around waves. Then, identify most dangerous camps / spells and pay closer attention to them. And think about how you can respond to those spells. And I'll just write, like, for example, stasis Zed-ult, right? Like, we understand, obviously, we can stasis Zed-ult, but we can't flash Zed-ult, so we're not going to save our flash for that type of thing. Then we need to shift from a farming mindset to more of a fight-focused mindset. Once Baron / third drag is spawning, unless we are really behind or really close to an item spike. Like, I want to make it very clear, I don't want you to just stop farming completely. Like, that's obviously dumb, right? But it's just like, now instead of getting that additional top wave, maybe we go mid a little earlier so that we make sure our teammates don't die before a Baron. Or a lot of times for you, it's farming jungle camps. You shouldn't be farming like when there's a Baron or that type of thing. I think those are the main things I can think of that we spoke about. Do you have any other questions or anything we spoke about that you want me to mention specifically?
So let's say, because, man, I would say 60% of the time, to be realistic.
Yeah.
Because on this elo, a lot of people don't have the mindset of objective. Sometimes they just stay farming their minions or farming their jungle, and they don't go for objective. I myself, as an ADC, I cannot just go, oh, I'm gonna phase, go straight to the bush with no vision. Oh, I'm gonna get caught, obviously. To put some vision on the, let's say, dragon. In that case, if they don't go for the objective, which many of them don't do, even in Master Elo, Diamond Elo, as an ADC, what should I be doing? Even though I want to go for the objective, I want to have priority on the river with my team for Dragon or Baron or the Herald, whatever. What do you think is going to be my play as a solo ADC, knowing sometimes they're sometimes not going to make the call for the objective?
Yeah, so if they don't go for the objective, we should just give it up. That's what I wrote here, right, generally. But use mid-prio to and early dragon setup or early setups on waves to get your team to go. Because the reality is, for example, the first game we watched, the reason your team didn't go for the third dragon was not because they didn't want to or they weren't thinking about it. It's because you didn't set up properly. And they didn't set up properly either, but I don't care what they do because they're fucking idiots. So you need to be doing that. And if you did that, they would have. But in a lot of cases, you're right. They're just not going to go. Like, even, I set up properly and then my teammate doesn't go. You just have to leave it. Like, there's nothing you can do. You're an ADC.
And you say, as a Kai'Sa, you go ADC based on your support, you say, right?
Oh yeah, we can talk about drafting last.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So you said, as a Kai'Sa, you said enhancers?
Yeah,
What was the word you said?
enchanter. So do you know what an enchanter is?
Enchanters. Like what? Like a Lux?
No, enchanter equal Lulu. Why can't I think of words now? You,
Milo?
yeah, Emilio, Soraka. Basically, champs that buff and heal. So that type of thing. Does that make sense? Champs that buff and
What
heal.
about like a Janna too? No?
Janna, yes. Janna and Nami are enchanters as well.
Beautiful.
Soraka, Sona, Janna, Nami. You can write all those.
Okay.
But like
And for
especially
Mhm.
Lulu, Yumi, Emilio are like the best for Kaisa. So does that make sense? Like what enchanters are?
Absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
so then Kaisa is really good with enchanters. Enchanters, so is Sivir. But you can still play both of them with tanks. But you can still play them both with tanks, so they were fine with them. And then Varus likes having supports with good crowd
DC.
control. Yeah.
Yeah.
Generally, and poke. So Karma, Lux, Senna, Fiona, Nautilus, etc.
Trash.
Thresh, yeah, and he's still good with everything as well. Like you can play. Basically, all these champs are all really good with everything. For your champion pool, if you want me to just recommend, I just recommend you stick to these three. If you want to play Ezreal, the reality is Ezreal and Varus do very similar things. The only difference is mobility, right? But generally, if you position well enough, you should get the same value out of Varus and still not need that. But if you want Ezreal, play Ezreal, and he works well with a lot of similar things to Varus. More so works well with poke more than crowd control. So I'll still write that, even though I don't necessarily recommend playing it a lot. But because Ezreal's also really hard, so it's just harder to get value out of properly. But yeah.
That's actually my main ADC.
Okay, then if it's your main ADC, then keep playing it because you're probably good at it. So in that case, play him with when you have a Karma, when you have a Lux, when you have whatever, and you know.
So let me ask you.
Yeah.
You say so based on you because you have a lot of more knowledge than me. You have more knowledge about the game, the meta,
Yeah.
and you're knowing that I play specific champions. Which champions ADC you should recommend I should stick with? Knowing what's on the meta, knowing that it's better for climbing, it's better as a solo queue, knowing the situation there's a lot of trolls, people that don't do objective.
Yeah. In terms of champion pool, it's not super important which ADC you're choosing specifically, and it's going to depend on the meta. Like right now, Kai'Sa, Varus, and Sivir are all the best ADCs in the game, so playing any of them is going to work really well.
Mhm.
Champions like Kai'Sa and Sivir, we call them hyper carries. Champions who
Yes.
do a bunch of damage later. These types of champs, it's a little frustrating to play because you don't have as much control over the early game. So if your teammates end up screwing you over, you just have to farm and hope that your teammates don't end too hard, which is frustrating. But you can also, on the other side of things, carry super hard if your teammates, like you can completely 1v9 a game, whereas Varus can't really 1v9 a game. But Varus gets more control because he has higher range. It's easier to stay safe. Same with Ezreal, right? These champions are a lot safer, more consistent. You have more control yourself, but you're not going to be able to 1v9 with like a really shit team, which is why
Right.
none of these champs, and like Varus and Ezreal are my two most played ADCs. Kai'Sa's like top 3 or 4 as well, probably for me. Like I've played all these except for Sivir a lot, but very similar style either way. For me, Varus works the best, but that's also because I've been ranked 1 Varus and it's like my main champion. I played like 1,500 games of him, so like that's unique to me specifically. Ezreal is the one I do second best with. Again, because I do well with poke champions who have more control over the early game. I don't do super well with these champions who farm and wait for the later parts of the game. So basically, look at your win rates for this season. Go to your thing. Look what you're winning on the most of those champions. And then that can be the one you choose the most. But you can still choose these other champs. Like, even if, say, Kai'Sa is your worst, if you have a Lulu, Kai'Sa's awesome, right? So you can still lock it in like these types of cases.
But if I get like a Lux, I can
Yeah.
choose Varus.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or if I get Nautilus, Thresh, Varus.
Yeah.
Even though they have a lot of crowd control on the other side, you think still is the best pick Varus?
Yeah, I mean, I build Edge of Night second item. Crowd control is not really a problem. I mean, you can grab a QSS after your third item. You should really be chilling. But like, if you struggle, like this is why you need to understand it's unique to you. Varus is my best ADC by far. If you just struggle into those types of comps, for you, then lock in Kaisa or lock in Ezreal. Like, that's totally fine. Not everything that I do is going to work the exact same for you, because there's just a difference in understanding of the champions to an extent. So if you feel like it's like,
Absolutely.
no, I just need that dash on Ezreal so that I don't get caught by all the CC, then lock it in and it's fine, you know?
Makes sense. And if I ever want more coaching,
Yeah.
we can set up again, and
Yeah. So I recommend waiting about minimum of like 2 weeks to make sure you're actually focusing on implementing all these things, right? But definitely in the future, if you like feel like you've improved on these and now you're not sure what to go about improving next, then yeah, definitely.
and let me ask you,
Yeah.
one last thing. What would you say is the best suggestion as a solo queue player overall? Because sometimes, and I'll be completely honest, even if you put it on YouTube,
Yeah.
man, sometimes I go into the chat and I'm telling you, man, I go into the chat, I say, things that tilts me because of the play
Yeah.
style
Yeah.
that they're doing, and I completely get on focus of the game, and
Yeah,
we
okay.
lose.
So that's pretty straightforward, and this is where you kind of are going to like people, they want to improve for what they want to improve, like they want to have fun, they just want to like they'll to an extent try to get better, but they're going to be lazy and they're not actually going to like hold themselves accountable, or they're not like this is how I can tell if someone actually cares, basically. So I can tell you a bunch of specific details, which is what my entire channel is about. That's what these 14 things, they're all specific details, things to work on. None of these one specific things that I tell you, or any specific one thing I tell you, is going to change your game completely. The thing that's most important for
Right.
a solo queue player is genuinely words. It's genuinely just your mental, like 100%. So the fact that you type is probably holding you back more than any one of these 14 points. The fact that you type is already like really, really bad. So like just good mental in solo queue is the number one thing. And obviously, I get angry at games too. It's not like I have perfect mental. I get tilted. Main things that actually matter for solo queue. So main ways to improve mental is, so how many games do you play? Like when you sit down and play, how many games do you play in a row, roughly?
Um, Even 10, 12 games,
10 to 12. So
even
you play a
more.
lot. Okay. So
Yeah.
then anytime you lose 2 in a row, take a break for at least 10 minutes. Like just go do something else. I don't know, go scroll on, not 10, go scroll on TikTok or go eat or go do something. I don't care, right? Whatever you want to do. But don't play after losing 2 in a row. Like it's just, you're just going to calm down. And the problem is usually after losing 2 in a row, you're pissed off. You want to play another. You have to not do that if you really like care. Like that's a really good rule. Obviously I don't do that because I stream. So like, of course I can't do, but like that is a really important tip that helps a lot. And then the other thing is just understand one game doesn't matter. If we understand basic math, right, like it actually doesn't matter. Like winning or losing one game is almost never the difference between hitting the rank or not. It's about all those different games adding up. So it's about like
Right.
in the long run, right? And then playing for comebacks usually by going for opposite side of objective on second drag, and playing for gold bounties.
Mhm.
Because like these things, generally a lot of people, they go down 5k early game because their teammates are running it. They give up.
Right.
But if you don't give up and you get that, one gold bounty, you get one kill, all of a sudden you swing the gold 1500, you're a late game champion, you can carry games. Like all these types of things. And then lastly, focus on the details to improve on, and consider an individual game a success if you did it properly, basically, if you did that thing properly, rather than the result. And again, this is fucking way easier said than done. I don't do this. I get tilted at results a lot. Like it's not like it's gonna be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. I get tilted. I flame my teammates. I play worse sometimes. Whatever. All these things happen. It's not about never doing it. It's about being better than you were before. So it's not about having fucking perfect mental. It's about it being a little better than before, because maybe that better mental wins you 1 or 2 games. It might not win you, 100 more games. And then again, if you're always thinking about like what you can improve on, then you just have less time to focus on how dumb your teammates are, because you're worried about,
Yeah.
did I, use the 20 seconds before the wave Cam did not use that properly, so you're not really thinking about the fact that your Nard died for the 7th time because he's running it down because he's mad. I don't know that his girlfriend left him or whatever it is. Like that doesn't matter, right? So it's basically that. Like if you're good, if you have good mental, whatever your current rank is will probably go up by a rank, you know, in the long run, just from having good mental alone.
Gotcha. Yeah, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, you know, and what you do for the community.
Of course, thank you. I'll send you these notes, and I'll see you later.
Please.
Good luck.
Thank you, man. Stay safe.